What's up, YouTube? It's Joe Catchpolia sitting on the couch, making some money, investing in fractional real estate online, as usual. Today, I'm going to share a couple more due diligence tools that I use when I'm looking at markets. If you've followed any of my videos, you've seen some of the properties I've invested on Lofty have been in markets that I've openly said I'd never invest in this market for the long term. I don't think I don't think it has the right population trends and whatnot for me to want to be there. And my reasons for buying some of those properties are more of an arbitrage opportunity where the token price is dislocated from the real world asset price. You've seen me talk about that quite a bit, but today I want to get a little bit into a couple of tools that I use when I'm looking for markets to sort of buy those long-term holds, like the stuff that I'm getting on Mogul, for example. I think that they're paying a lot of attention to markets. I think a lot of the platforms are. Um, I always post anytime I mention a tool, I post it in the tools section of our Discord. This is just the Fractional Real Estate Investors Discord. There's a link in the description below, as well as links to any of the platforms that I'm currently invested on, so you can check those out. I will mention, I think I've had a couple people ask me about this. This Discord, this is not a sales funnel I've set up. I'm not trying to like move you along, like, okay, see my YouTube, join the Discord, and I'm going to try to sell you something. I don't have anything to sell you, unless you happen to be wanting to buy investment properties in San Antonio. That's what I do for a living. My goal for setting up the Discord and doing these videos is very much to form a community to where we can share ideas and talk about fractional real estate investing, and also hopefully shape this industry going forward. It is a very new industry, and a lot of the platforms are open to our criticism and our suggestions. I know I've talked to the founders of Lofty and of Mogul, yeah, I guess I have, and Soul's Lot, and you know, either interacted with them online or through some of their webinars, or some of them just on through Zoom. But they're almost all of the platforms right now are really open to talking to people. Uh, at least the ones that are still doing pretty well. Some of them that are huge. Like I haven't gotten in touch with anyone from Arrived yet. And then Landa, they don't seem to be wanting to talk to anybody at the moment, at least from what I've heard from investors on the site that are not super happy. But that's just what I've heard. I don't know that firsthand. I did put money on there and then take it off immediately because saw a lot of red flags. But there, you can hear about that on another video. Today, I just wanted to share, when I'm looking at a market. I know a lot of times I sort of, I hit the highlights, but I don't really go deep into, some of the stuff that you can look at in the census. I always start on Wikipedia. I like the way that they just present the population data over time. I think this tells us a whole bunch about the long-term viability of a market. But there's a lot more data out there. If you go, if you just go to the data.census.gov and you search a market. So you put in Houston, Texas, and I wanted to show you. So you get a whole bunch of stuff that pops up. I don't just click into this result. What I actually like to do, well, what does this one do? This one gives you, yeah, this one gives you a lot, and this is useful stuff too. I'm not telling you to ignore it. But I like to look at these. If you scroll down in these profiles in the Houston City, Texas profile, I'm going to show you some of the data that you have on here. I'm going to go through this. I'm going to show you some math I do to come up with sort of a proxy for vacancy rate for markets. And then I'm also going to share one other tool after that that is sort of less. Um, it's less ubiquitous. It's going to be a little bit different depending on where you are. But so you get a whole bunch of stuff here just right off the bat. You've got your population, you've got your employment rate. This is not the same as unemployment rate. Right, this has to do with like how many people are employed out of everybody. It's not like it's. it's a different number. So a lot of people, when they see that at first, they get worried. You can see your median income. One of the things I like a lot is to be able to look at this median income and compare it to the median rent, which is also on this page. You got your total housing units, you've got your total number of families. You can see how many people are, have some level of higher education. Some of this stuff, depending on your business model, could be really important, right? Like if you're looking at a lot of the rent by the room properties, uh, if you're looking at student housing, both of those it's very much young people, right? And so understanding the amount of young people in an area relative to the total population might be useful. If you're someone who's into the residential assisted living or even 55 plus communities, obviously then you want to look at what do we have in the older group. Now, one of the things that you have to be careful of when you're looking at this is this is just the city itself, right? And so like when we look at Houston, it's excluding a lot of the suburbs. And so a lot of times in markets that, sort of the suburbs are a lot more affluent, and maybe you're actually investing in a suburb of the city, sometimes the city data isn't as useful and you want to look at you actually want to pull up the city, the suburb too, and look at that. Um, let's see. There's a couple of things that I want to show you that I think are really useful. So this is one that I like. The residential mobility is, how many people here moved here from a different state. I think, um, I think it's in the last year. How many? Yeah, in the last year, how many people moved there from a different state? So you can see, like, you're getting a lot of inflow, right? So it's something that I want to see if I'm going to invest in an area. The percentage of veterans, I think that I don't know. I always find that interesting because I'm in San Antonio, and I think that we out of big cities we have by far the largest number. Ours is um, I want to say 8 or 9%. But so yeah, again, you have your median household income, you have your and it always compares it to your state. But let me see here, your education level. Oh, and then you have your tabs up here. I'm just going to jump to housing because I want to. So you can have your median gross rent, and when you look at that and you compare it to your median income, you can kind of get a sense of how affordable rentals are. Sorry about that. I was just having a problem with my computer. But so what I was just saying is that you can look at your median rental, compare it to your median income. It'll give you a good idea of how affordable your median rental is in your city. One of the things that you have to be careful of is that this is citywide data, so it's not necessarily going to match up with your whatever zip code you're in. For that, I think I like to use Rentometer. Um, to get the median rental at least. And then sometimes it is tough to get the household income by zip code. I think that you can do it with the census data. I'm actually pretty sure that you can. I'm not going to jump to that now because I don't have that open. But what I wanted to show you, one of my favorite things to do when I'm looking at a market to begin with, is I like to look at this total housing units number, and I like to compare it to the families and living arrangements, right? Your total households. And so what are we really talking about here when we do that? Your total housing units is just every single, apartment, house, anything that somebody might live in. Your total households is just every buddy that's occupying something like that, right? Either it might be a family occupying a home, it might be an individual occupying a home. um, but so what I like to do if I'm looking at a bunch of different markets that I'm thinking about being in, and these are all ones that I've bought pieces of, properties in recently. And so look, your total households, and I just pulled this number here, and I went and did the same thing for each of these markets. And then just subtract the total number of households from the total housing units. And that gives you this surplus housing units, right? So that means this is a housing unit that exists, that there's not somebody living in it. I'm honestly not sure how much these start to get skewed by short-term rentals. Um, I don't know. I mean, that's, there's some like granular aspects of the data that I don't really know, but I have found that in general, this is a tool that works pretty well to identify a market. And so, I've done that for each of these. And if you think about, okay, what's this surplus? This is actually, you can look at it as being basically a proxy for your vacancy rate, right? It's a unit. So like if you had, so Houston, it looks like it's 5.62% vacancy. Um, in my mind, that seems to match up pretty well to what I think of that market, right? I mean, no, you're never going to have a market with 100% vacancy or 100% occupancy, um, because you're going to have frictional vacancy, which is somebody moved out, somebody else isn't going to move in for another week or two, right? You're always going to have some of that, and every week of vacancy is basically 2% of vacancy, right? At 2%, because you've got 52 weeks. If you did the math at 50, it's exactly 2%. It's not exactly when you have 52. Um, so, like for example, when I'm looking at vacancy rates in some place where I have access to the MLS, I'll look up rentals in that market and I'll look at how many days on market that rental lasted, and that gives me a better idea about vacancy rate, right? But it's not, even that's not perfect because it doesn't take into account the make ready time, right? If how long it took that unit to get to be ready for the next tenant. And so that's what I would normally use if I'm like in San Antonio or I have access to it in Houston and Austin. And it only really works in markets where there's a lot of rentals that happen on the MLS. But so sometimes you can use days on market for a proxy for to convert to occupancy or vacancy. But if you don't have access to that and you want to look at or market wide numbers, this is a really easy way to do that. And so you can see the markets that I like happen to be ones that have very low market vacancy rates, right? And it matches up with the idea that these are markets that are fast growing. More people continue to move in. Although there are a lot of houses being built, there's clearly not some huge surplus of properties. I was actually a little bit surprised that we didn't see um, a bigger market vacancy rate in Chicago. Although when we look at, this is the Wikipedia page, you do see, okay, there's been some growth over the last couple decades. You did have a big pullback though, so this was surprising to me. Um, I don't know. I don't know what's going on there. It is a market where I own a couple properties, but it's not one that I think, it doesn't, the long-term trend isn't really clear, right? But I think it's to the downside because if you look at one point, there was 3.6 million. Um, but if you, and that's why one of the things why I like to look at both your snapshot view of like, okay, what's going on today, but also what are the trends, right? Because if all you looked at was this number, well, you might think, well, yeah, Chicago is almost as good as Houston or San Antonio. I don't believe that to be the case when I'm looking at my long-term prospects for those cities. Um, I'd much rather have one that's a fast has a fast growing population, and not just in the city, but the MSA itself. Excuse me. You can probably tell I've been sick the last few days. That's why my speech is even worse than regular. Right? Lots of pauses, and I'm sorry about that. But like when you look at this metric for some markets that I think that are really clear that there's problems, like St. Louis and Cleveland, you can see, okay, we have tons of surplus units, right? And this really matches up with my experience in owning units in these markets. Um, you have your properties stay vacant for a long time. Um, they're just not easy to fill, and it's why am I, one of the things I'm still buying in some of those markets because I think we're getting a really incredible discount on the property, but I don't think that it will work. I don't think we'll profit by holding it long term. I think holding it long term with a really high vacancy rate ends up making you not, lose out on. You're just not going to make a good cash flow no matter what you do. If you're, it's tough to beat the market. I say you're not. It's possible, but it's tough to beat a market that is just rough overall, right? I mean, there's definitely people in all of those markets that run successful real estate investment companies, um, but they're ice skating uphill. If you're it's just not the way that I want to go. But I think that for arbitrage opportunities, where the tokens are real cheap compared to the real world price, I'm happy to buy them, and then hopefully we sell those properties in real life, and to make the profit there. But so this is, and again, I just want to recap. All I'm looking at here, right, is total housing units minus total households, right? And so I think that it's not a perfect, it's not perfect just for your occupancy, but for every city that I've checked that I've had a good sense of, this has worked pretty good. Um, One of the problems is, most of the places where you're going to get real good data for your decision making for real estate investing, a lot of them they want to charge you money for them, right? I mean, they're almost all of them are just pulling census data and some other public data, but they're cutting it up for you in a way that is more helpful. That's not always the case. I mean, some of them, like I used to pay for CoStar, which they do their own surveys. I mean, there's definitely those. Oh, and that brings me to what the last one I wanted to mention is the Federal Reserve banks in different regions. Some of them put out a ton of great info. Some of them seem to not, and I don't really understand. So, one of the things that I like to, if you search for housing vacancy survey and then the city that you're looking for, that seems to do a pretty good job of pulling these up if they're available in a market, and because they're not doing these all the time. But so this is the Houston one. It's back from 2022. I couldn't find a more recent one, so I think Google probably pulled the most recent one. Um, I think at the time increased to 5%. Yeah, so this was their apartment vacancy rate was 5% at that point in time. That kind of matches up with what we're thinking of. It's not necessary, or what we did here math wise. It's not necessarily always going to when you look at apartment rates. Um, but the other thing that you'll often get from the Federal Reserve banks is these economic indicators. And okay, so this rental thing was from 2022, but if I'm looking in Houston, every single month they're putting out some sort of, they're giving you your job growth, your unemployment rate, average hourly earning. You get a lot of good data. And so the problem with this is it's not as easy to compare from one market to the next because um, it doesn't seem to be uniform across markets what they're actually giving you. And maybe it is, and maybe there's some place that it's aggregated differently, but I just haven't seen it. So in any case, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to already did. I just dropped that the census search link right here. I think that's one. And you can tell me, like, I'm just trying to have a quick video on my favorite thing to get from this. But if you dig into this, there's all kinds of information that you can get on every market. Um, so yeah, that occupancy rate, and then your affordability by comparing your income to your average rental rate. Those are my favorite too. But looking at you have to look at some of these over time to get to figure out growth rates and whatnot, which is kind of aggravating. I'd love it if in these, they have the data, if you could click on any one of them and then have it just share a chart of what that looked like over time. Obviously, I'm being picky where they're just giving me all this free data. Um, but I am curious if you're somebody who spends much time looking at census data, to help you pick markets. What's your favorite data point? Are there certain things that you look for? I'm super curious if people care about, if you're looking at educational attainment or health, whether or not people are insured. I'm sure there's some angle. I think probably for any piece of information, there could be some angle for some strategy. So because there's so many different real estate strategies, different thoughts. The second language, how much is not English. I think it's kind of interesting to think about if you're operating your own properties, right? Like here in San Antonio, if your property manager doesn't have quite a few bilingual people, you're going to struggle. I mean, the property management company that I'm affiliated with here is um, has probably half the staff is bilingual. I don't know that that's an accurate number, but I mean, if somebody has a problem, if we have a tenant that doesn't understand something that we always have someone that can speak with them, right? And that's uh, I have found is not always the case. Sometimes you'll have these little shops that'll have just two people that started a property management company, and it didn't occur to them that they're not going to be able to talk to a good portion of their tenant base, or they're going to have some communication issues, right? Because I mean, a lot of the people, it's a second language, or English is, and so then we run into problems. But anyway, please do share what's your favorite piece of data that you look at. Put it in the comments below, or jump into the Discord and let's have a conversation about. Always you're also always welcome to add other tools to that tools section. Um, I will delete them if you're just spamming your own tools, but if it's something that's useful, feel free to put your own tool, and we'll check it out. And because there's definitely a lot out there. I'm just trying to, I've already had a little bit of spam that I've had to take care of, but it's not too bad yet. Luckily, it's small but growing. Um, yeah, I think that's it for today. In any case, until next time, I'm going to keep making mistakes so that you don't have to.